What's up guys, Steffen here. Today I wanted to make a video where I talk about how the Dutch travel surfaces are categorized into a single system today. So as a transportation engineer in the Netherlands, originally from the United States, I get asked a lot about how can we do what the Dutch do in our home country, what can we learn from them, how do we implement what we want to do. And to be able to do that, we really need to understand how things are categorized and organized. That way we can take what we like from their system and then figure out a way to make it fit more conveniently in our system. So Not Just Spikes made a great video about this topic. He talked about the concept of duurzame veilig. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I'd highly recommend you do so. I'll link it in the description below. And I would definitely say you should go ahead and watch that video first if you're not familiar with this stuff. So feel free to pause this video and go to his channel to check out the video. But I'm assuming most of you have already seen that or are familiar a little bit with Dutch traffic design already. So with that being said, I just want to make a couple of things clear first. So often what people mean by words like roads and streets can really vary depending on where you go. Roads and streets can often be used very interchangeably as cultural terms. Sometimes if you're in a technical profession, a word like a road or a distributed road can have a very technical definition. That is going to mean something different than the common cultural definition. And even sometimes the organizations that are trying to make improvements and advocate for things in the local community will sometimes use words that are made up or they don't exist yet. So a great example of this is the word strode, used by the organization Strong Towns, where they talk about how it's a travel surface that combines the functions of a street and a road, mixes them together, and makes something that's horrible and doesn't function at all. So I've kind of done the same thing. Some of these words here are the Dutch words as they use them, but I've gone ahead and added a couple of my own terms also to demonstrate things a little more easily. So the first example of that is the word travel surface. This is a word that I have come up with, and it pretty much means any kind of paved surface that is meant to move any kind of traffic, car traffic or non-car traffic, in a certain direction. So in the Netherlands, all travel surfaces are split up depending on their design guidelines. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the Rijkswaterstaat. The Rijkswaterstaat is the Ministry of Infrastructure and Environment, and they're responsible for pretty much all of the freeways in the Netherlands. So the word autosnelweg pretty much translates into freeway, and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water has its very own design guideline for this. So it's called the ROOA. Unlike the United States, where we have one traffic design guide for pretty much everything, the Dutch split it up pretty much based on what we're dealing with. So freeways have their very own traffic design guide. That traffic design guide looks like this. It's called the Richtlijn Ontwerp Autosnelwegen, or the design guide for the design of freeways. Sometimes it doesn't translate over very well into English, but this is pretty much everything the Netherlands needs to design freeways. If you're wondering what one of these looks like, so this is going to apply to all of the A freeways here. Again, A stands for Autosnelweg. And if I were to drop a street view on it, you're going to see that it's pretty much, oh, not here, excuse me, that was a mistake. If I were to drop it down, you would see this is exactly what we would expect a freeway to look like. Freeway is just meant to move car traffic quickly from one city to another, or you might even be driving to a different country on it. So that's pretty much freeways. So in the Netherlands, you have freeways and then pretty much everything else. And everything else falls under what we would call duurzame veilig. Duurzame veilig is a law that was passed in the Netherlands in the 90s, and it means sustainable safety in English. And sustainable safety law says that any kind of travel surface that's not a freeway has to fall into one of three categories. A regionale stroomweg, regional highway, a gebied ontsluitingsweg, a regional access road, or an erftoegangsweg, or a neighborhood access street. So I'm going to go through all of these and break down all the categories for you guys. The first distinction we have in duurzame veilig is if it's buiten de bebouwkom or binnen de bebouwkom. Have no fear, I'll go ahead and translate that. Buiten de bebouwkom means outside of the built up area, so pretty much outside of the city. Binnen de bebouwkom means inside of the built up area, inside of the city. Typically, the provincies, which are the states of the Netherlands, are going to be responsible for the design and maintenance of everything outside of the built up area. And the gemeentes, or the cities, the municipalities, are responsible for things inside of the built up area. Just a word of caution, that isn't always 100% true. Sometimes you can have cities that are responsible for things outside the built up area, and sometimes the provinces will be responsible for things inside the built up area. It can kind of vary. It's just, as a rule of thumb, and to keep this model simple, we're going to stick with this model here. The design guide for things outside of the built up area has its own guide. It's called the HWO, or the Handboek Wegontwerp. The Handboek Wegontwerp, the cover looks like this. It's published by the organization CRLV. These guys are responsible for all of these design guidelines. It's already split up into 3 categories, as you guys can see. So yeah, the first category for outside the built-up area is regional highway. It's again going to be similar to what you would expect to see in the United States. So if we took the, let's see, yeah, so if we look at the N205 road, this is going to again be similar to a highway we would expect to see in the US. So this is a very high-speed travel surface. We don't want pedestrians and cyclists anywhere near here. Like a freeway, it's meant to move car traffic efficiently, but it's not going to be up to quite the same design standards as a freeway would be. You can even see here on the marking, the speed limit 80 kilometers an hour, and even tells you the name of the province that's responsible for maintaining this regional highway. Going a step down from the regional highways, then we go to the GOWs, or the regional access roads. So a GOW is it's a little similar to a highway. It's meant to be serving higher speed car traffic, but again, we're going to be seeing lower car speeds again, and you're going to start coming across more obstacles. So this is what a GOW outside the built-up area looks like. You're going to start seeing things like turning lanes be introduced, signals at intersections, and you might even see a bus stop and a bus lane along the side of it as you get close to the built-up area, but you're still outside of it. Still, again, this is going to be a very high-speed travel surface, so again, it's still unsafe for cyclists and pedestrians. You'll never see a Sharrow or a painted bike lane on a travel surface like this. No way. That brings us to the final category outside the built-up area, the ETW outside the built-up area. And the ETW is where we're really going to start seeing major differences in design. So unlike the other categories, the ETW isn't really so much about providing an efficient through mode of travel. It's more about providing convenient access. So if we were to look at this map here of Haarlem, we have a ETW called Spaarndamseweg. And Spaarndamseweg is meant to provide easy access from North Haarlem to this village called Spaarndam over here. So you're not going to see very high-speed cars here. The only car traffic that's really going to be using this street is pretty much anybody who lives here and is coming to and from here. You're not going to see cars that are taking much larger trips that are coming through here just because. The only person who'd come through here in that case would be someone who's probably very lost, or they want to take the scenic route. because you have much lower car volumes on here and you have a lower car speed, in this case it's 60 kilometers an hour, that's where they start feeling comfortable enough to add cyclists to the travel surface, but you're going to see a separated sidewalk here still though. So these are bike lanes on either side. And it provides access to that village you guys can see in the far right corner. Moving from outside of the built-up area, now we're going inside of the built-up area. So all of traffic design inside the built-up area is governed by the ASVV. The ASVV stands for Anbeveling for Verkehrsvoorzieningen binnen de bebouwde kom, or suggestions for traffic measures inside the built-up area. Like the outside of the built-up area, we also have GOWs. Because it's dictated by a different design guide and we're inside the city, it's going to serve the same function, efficient way for through car traffic, but we're not going to see the same kind of design. So it's not going to take up as much space. You're not going to have as high speed car traffic. So a great example of this would be the N200 road in Haarlem. I believe this is the N200. You're going to see this is obviously still not a comfortable surface for cyclists and pedestrians to use, just meant for car traffic. But we're inside the city, so we're going to be close to buildings. We're going to have bike paths that go parallel to the road, and same thing for sidewalks as well. So this is really a typical cross section for what a GOW will look like inside of the built-up area. Yeah, N200. You're going to see lots of more signals as well. So similar function as the GOW outside the built-up area, but it's tailored for its environment. Moving on from the GOW, we're then going back to the ETW. And again, like the ETW outside the built-up area, it serves a similar function, but in this case, instead of providing access to one or two farmhouses or villages, it's providing direct access to shops and businesses and residential houses. So a great example of this is this street in 's-Hertogenbosch in the south of the Netherlands, right along the canal here. The ETD, you can tell this is an ETW because they're using paving stones here. An ETW, a typical ETW, have plenty of car parking alongside of it, low traffic intensity, and low car speeds. So all ETWs inside of the built-up area are meant to have a speed limit of 30 kilometers an hour. That's when it becomes slow enough that the Netherlands starts allowing cyclists to share the travel surface with cars. But in this type of ETW, we're still going to have a separated sidewalk. So technically, they don't want pedestrians walking down the center of it. And this distinction is where I introduced my own categories here. So you guys might have noticed I have what I call car ETW and living ETW here. These are my own terms, and I'm going to explain these to you guys. So a car ETW is a ETW that's, as the name would suggest, is really just meant for cars. So going back to this street here, even though we know it's a much more comfortable and the kind of travel service you'd want inside the city, you can still tell the majority of this street width here is meant for cars. You know, we have cars going up and down here. We have car parking. We just have this one sidewalk here. It's not pedestrianized, yeah. And so that's what a car ETW is, but that's going to be in major contrast to what I call a living ETW. This is an ETW that is still all about providing access, but it's really been more pedestrianized, and cars are not going to be making as regular use of it as the previous category. So the living ETW is more designed for pedestrians and cyclists than it has been for cars. So a great example of that would be going to find it for you guys. That would be a great example in Harlem that I can show you guys. So this would be the entrance of this living ETW. Again, it would be a completely pedestrianized area. Cars are sometimes allowed to come through here for deliveries or special events, but this is all about providing access to the shops. But instead of for being cars, it's almost exclusively meant for people. You can sometimes tell that it's a living ETW because there's no sidewalks. People are encouraged to walk on the entire width of it. Sometimes cyclists will have to weave around it. And this would also include what the Dutch call the woonerf. So a woonerf would be a residential version of the living ETW. So a woonerf tends to be a bit more narrow. It just has lots of houses, not really any shops here. So this is a new let's see, what's it called? Nieuwe Kruisstraat. And then again, this is all completely pedestrianized. People walk up and down here. And even at one part of it, they've completely blocked it off to car traffic here. So the street view car wasn't even able to come here and take a photo. I can show you guys what the other side looks like. So all of this here is what we would call the classic Dutch woonerf, which is part of the living ETW category. And this is what it looks like on the other side. I saved the best for last. So some of you guys might wonder why I placed the Fietsstraat category like this, with just a direct line. And it's because I wanted to emphasize something really important, which is the Fietsstraat is not a legally defined category. It doesn't exist in a dictionary. A Fietsstraat is a description of a function. So there's no word in the Dutch traffic manual that defines this. What they've done is they'd say, if you want it to operate like if you want an ETW to operate like a Fietsstraat, you need to do certain things. And the function of a Fietsstraat is to combine local car traffic that are going from their homes and leaving their homes and coming to their homes, and they combine that with heavy through bicycle traffic. So they can't just throw down a sign and say this is a Fietsstraat now. They have to actually design. They first have to say this is an ETW, and then if they want heavy through bicycle traffic combined with local car traffic, they have to design for that. So a great example of that would be in The Hague, in an area called Conradkade. If you guys were to look here, this is a great example of a bicycle street. So you guys can see that cars are allowed to come through here, and this Fietsstraat provides access for pretty much all the people who live in the houseboats right here or live over here. And they're allowed to park here, they're allowed to come and go as they want. But this is also, as you can see, because we use red pavement and it's dashed, this is part of a larger bicycle network. So you have lots of people who are cycling across The Hague who make regular use of this Fietsstraat. But you'll still see the occasional car driver come through here. But again, this isn't a subcategory. By a traffic manual in the Netherlands, they would still call this an ETW. And that's pretty much a wrap. So that's how all travel surfaces in the Netherlands are organized. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Thanks, guys.